Hey everyone, this is writing micro lesson number 5 on paragraph structure for Honors 111 in the Civilization sequence of the Honors College at the University of Maine. And I'm the instructor, Rob Glover. So today we're going to talk about paragraph structure, and we'll be focusing on kind of 3 main components. And these are going to be the criteria on which your paragraph structure will be graded this week. So pay attention to these and keep these in mind as you're doing your writing. The first is manageability. So paragraphs break the text into units that your reader can digest. It is much easier to read a piece of writing when you have tightly focused paragraphs that center around a main idea and the ideas flow logically from one main point to the next. The second is organization. So when you're using paragraphs, you're making choices about how you structure your paragraphs, and those are also important choices about how you organize your ideas. And then lastly is transition. So paragraphs, the way that you structure them can provide kind of a coherent flow from one idea or one point or one assertion to the next for your reader. Absent that, there can be kind of jumps in the arguments that you're making or the ideas that you're introducing that can be somewhat jarring for the reader. But if you incorporate clean breaks between ideas and ideally transitional language that kind of aids in the flow from one idea to another, it's just a much better experience for your reader, and generally they want to keep reading and they understand the points that you're making, which is the whole idea of writing. So some common writing challenges, and these are things that I see in student writing, these are things that I see in writing from my colleagues, these are things that I see in journalistic writing, books that I read, even in my own writing, I come across these challenges. In general, there's some issues that may be linked to paragraph usage and how you're structuring your paragraphs. So if I'm reading something and it seems like the ideas are not developed fully enough, that can be a function of paragraph use. If the arguments seem as if they're not coherent, or I really have to struggle to piece together the logic or the ideas in an argument, then that can be a function of paragraph usage. If it seems like the arguments or ideas are not supported, if they're kind of thrown out there and then information that is tangentially related to those ideas is introduced, that can be a function of paragraph usage. And also, you've probably had the experience in which you have a piece of writing and it lays out a main argument, it lays out a thesis statement, and by the end of that piece of writing, it seems as if you're in a different place, and it doesn't really seem as if the writing has actually addressed or introduced a response to the actual stated purpose. That can also be linked to paragraph usage. So it seems like something kind of mundane and unimportant, but it can really be similar to sentence structure. I would say it can be the backbone of really good writing. So some warning signs. I would say that almost by looking at a piece of paper, a piece of writing, before I even actually read it and really delve into the ideas and the writing itself, there's some things that almost by the sight of it, I can tell that there might be warning signs. These are kind of red flags for me as a reader. The first is very long paragraphs. So if you have a paragraph that stretches on, 3/4 of a page and a half, that's generally a sign to me as a reader that you're trying to make too many points in a single paragraph. There's too much information embedded in there. And it can also be a sign that you're not writing concisely enough. So you're not being very diligent and strategic in what information you want to include and how well is it related to the main point or main argument that you want to defend. Similar to that, very short paragraphs are a sign that you're not developing your points properly. So you're kind of introducing points and then maybe taking for granted that the reader knows what you mean or understands what you want to say. And if that's the case, you're likely not providing sufficient evidence to support the points that you're making, or you're not providing enough analysis of your own. There's not enough of your voice within those paragraphs, within that writing. So either very long paragraphs or very short, kind of clipped, concise, abrupt paragraphs are generally a warning sign for me as a reader and also as a professor that wants to see your writing improve and strengthen. Here's what every paragraph ought to contain. So there should be a topic sentence. Remember, we spent all that time on thesis statements and how the thesis statement is the most important sentence in the entire document that you put together. Well, topic sentence is kind of similar to a thesis statement. It's essentially a thesis statement for a single paragraph. It introduces the main idea or the point of the paragraph, and it should generally be front-loaded. You want to have that be the first thing that the reader sees, and then you're going to develop the ideas to support it throughout the course of the paragraph. So the topic sentence is going to introduce the main idea or the point of the paragraph. What is it you want to say in this piece of writing? Also, supporting evidence or examples. So this is going to substantiate, kind of back up, or explicate, elaborate upon that claim utilizing evidence. And evidence could be lots of different things. It could be textual evidence. It could be data. It could be a source you're drawing in from outside the text itself. But there should be some sort of evidence. You have to think about what is the evidence that will substantiate or explicate the point that I'm making. There should be analysis, so your own idea or contribution. And that should be linked to the overarching argument. And then lastly, there should be a concluding sentence. So these paragraphs are kind of a mini exploration of an idea, a mini legitimation of an idea. They're backing up what's being said. And the concluding sentence is going to end that exploration and ideally serve as some sort of bridge to the next statement that you want to make, to the next main idea or point that will be introduced in the subsequent paragraph. So if I look at a paragraph and it's not clear to me what the topic sentence is, oftentimes the information that's included will be kind of all over the place. And as a reader, it's not the best experience because you're not told, what do I do with this information? There's no kind of instruction in terms of what this is supposed to mean in relation to what the author is arguing. So it's important that paragraphs are not just arbitrary breaks between sentences to fulfill some sort of generic expectation, but they are actually strategically chosen in a way to support your ideas. So when do you begin a new paragraph? Well, a number of different places in which you would think about perhaps breaking up ideas into multiple paragraphs. Primarily, the kind of core reason is if you're introducing a new idea or a new point. So new ideas always mean a new paragraph. You may have very large ideas, like an over-encompassing idea that contains many subpoints that are spread across multiple paragraphs. But if there's a new point being made or a new idea being introduced, that should always mean a new paragraph. If you're contrasting information ideas, so if you say, many would interpret this particular example in history to mean X, Y, or Z, but on the other hand, one could look at it and see these alternative explanations. Well, as you pivot to that alternative explanation, that's a great point at which to begin a new paragraph, because you are introducing a very different idea. You're introducing the counterpoint to another idea. You also want to be kind of sympathetic to your reader. So you've probably read very lengthy paragraphs that don't have any sort of break, and as a reader that can be exhausting, and it can be hard to discern kind of what's happening, and your eyes can kind of gloss over. Sometimes you'll just shift to the next paragraph if you're dealing with a very lengthy paragraph. So if the paragraph is too long, your readers are going to lose interest or they'll have difficulty following. And so just as a measure to keep your reader engaged and give them a bit of a break, you want to think about paragraph usage. And also when you end your introduction or you start your conclusion, those are elements of the paper that generally should be set apart, right? So you want a clear introduction that ends with a thesis statement, or you want to kind of break off your conclusion and have it made clear to the reader that this is where you're wrapping up. So those are some areas in which you would really always introduce a new paragraph. So I've given you an example here of what I think is a well-constructed paragraph. You have a topic sentence, you have some substantiating evidence, you have analysis that the student provides on their own, right? And then you have a concluding statement, which could be, wrapping up that idea. It could also serve as a bridge to the next idea in the next paragraph. So I'm just going to read it. We start with the topic sentence. By its very nature, motivation requires a degree of individual satisfaction or narcissism. So we know that paragraph is going to relate to what motivation requires for an individual, what what is required in order to have motivation. And then we have some substantiating evidence, right? Robbins et al. 1998 suggests that motivation has as its basis the need to focus on and please the self. This is supported by Shaw, Shepard, and Wagaman, 2000, who contend that this narcissistic drive is based upon the human effort to find personal significance in life. It can be argued that the desire to improve one's status is a highly motivational force and is central to the idea of narcissistic motivation. The narcissistic motivational strategies that are put forward by Shaw et al. 2000 are concerned with motivation for life in general, but may also have applications in the context of work. So that's the student's own spin. They're introducing their own original ideas. It can be argued, suggests that they are in fact making the argument, and then they're talking about some existing research, right? But arguing that it may have applications in other contexts. And presumably this is a paper which is trying to take some ideas that are more general and apply them in a more narrow area. And then they have that concluding statement. These strategies, with their focus on personal needs, demonstrate that narcissism is an essential component of motivation. And there's a nice kind of symmetry there, right? They've started with the assertion, and then in the concluding statement, they're reaffirming what they've just analyzed. They're telling them and then telling the reader again, right? So it feels whole, it feels complete, and it's short enough that there's no fatigue that sets in, right? You're not overwhelmed when you see a paragraph of this length. So I think that's a well-constructed paragraph. It's a little bit different than a lot of the writing we might be doing in honors, right? This is probably for a psychology class or something like that. But it's just good in terms of its form, and it's a good model for how to be thinking about your own paragraph construction. So there's some additional guidance on paragraph structure. Once again, I think the Purdue Online Writing Lab is a really good resource, and they have a specific handout, a section of the website that deals with paragraph structure. And also the University of Maryland Writing Center has a good kind of primer on paragraph structure. So that's a quick run through of paragraph structure. For this week, as I said, going back to the original kind of point here, what I'm looking for in your writing is manageability. So is this digestible for your reader? Are you making good choices about how to structure the paragraph? Is it organized around a topic sentence? Is the information and analysis that you're including related to that topic sentence? And then lastly, does the paragraph work in terms of transition? Is there a coherent flow from one idea to another? Does it start off with a topic sentence, move to that analysis and explication, and then end with some sort of concluding statement that perhaps provides a bridge to the next idea? So paragraph structure is not accidental. It's not arbitrary. It's part of writing. It's arguably one of the most important things that you can do to keep your reader engaged and keep them following your ideas. So I'll wrap up there, and I look forward to reading your work for this week. Thanks.